all different models. So I cleaned them up, lined them up, and then I went on eBay, found some more, and then I got to 20, 25, 30. And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, these would look cool in a museum. So I looked up Bitcoin Museum. Crickets. Nothing out there. I'm like, that's crazy. You mean to tell me we're building the world's best financial decentralized infrastructure, yet nobody's preserving the history of the only tangible part that Bitcoin has, which is the miners? So that's where my idea popped up, and that's where everything grew from there to where we are today.
Welcome back to the Compass Mining Podcast. Today, I'm super excited to welcome the team from the Bitcoin Mining Museum, led by, I believe, the Coin Dad. So, Coin Dad, if you could, thank you, first of all, for hopping on and talk to me about how you are and maybe introduce the team.
I'm tired. I just finished driving 1,000 miles from mining disrupts. I was supposed to be chilling right now, but I was like, you know what? Let me get on here with you guys. Since this is fresh off the conference and a lot of things happened while we were down there. But yeah, my name's the Coin Dad. Real name's Tobias Barber. And I founded the Bitcoin Mining Museum a little over 4 years ago. And through that process, I ran across Lance and Tyler, who I've seen were equally motivated about the history of Bitcoin. And I asked them to come join the team. And the moment especially with Tyler was he's in Canada. First off, their titles is hash historians, not historians. I think that's pretty dope and fitting. But there was a moment where I was pretty busy. I forgot. I think I was on a tractor working or something. And I look at my phone and then Tyler is there with a trunk full of old miners. And he literally drove 3 hours for me in Canada to go find some stuff that I didn't have for the museum. And I'm like, that's gung-ho. That's motivation right there. And I'm like, I got to have him on the team. And then same thing with Lance. He actually met me at 6 o'clock in the morning in the Food Lion parking lot in the middle of a small town in North Carolina just to sell me a PDU for my mining operation in my shed and stuff. And I'm like, that's motivation too. But since then, yeah, we built relationships together and they've done a hell of a job helping to build out the website and going on conferences with me and everything, literally. And that's without the team, I couldn't do this. So I really appreciate their help.
Well, sweet. Lance, Tyler, thank you for hopping on. It sounds like you guys have put in your proof of work to get on the team. Talking about, this is really off topic, but maybe kind of related. In the pandemic, I'm up in Massachusetts and we have like 23.5 cents a kilowatt. So you can't really mine Bitcoin. So in the pandemic, my buddy and I were like, all right, we can't really mine Bitcoin. We tried to figure out locally where we could do it. We just couldn't do it. And at that point, Compass was just starting. And actually, I wasn't aware of Compass. But anyways, long story. We ended up buying some GPUs and just mining some Ethereum, which then we would take the profits and then, turn it into Bitcoin, right? That was our way to mine Bitcoin without mining Bitcoin. But I remember being in parking lots because when people would sell you the GPUs, this is at a time where a GPU would maybe be $300 or $400, but it was going for $1,300, $1,500 because of the pandemic. So being in many parking lots throughout Massachusetts, meeting up and buying GPUs with cash. I don't think I've ever told that story on here, but normally very early in the morning and many times at police station parking lots. So that way everyone was on the up and up and no one was going to get, robbed for their $1,500 in cash that they had. So anyways, neither here nor there. Very interesting. Lance and Tower. So where are you guys located?
Yeah, so I'm located in North Carolina, just near the Raleigh-Durham area. So that's kind of how the Coin Dad and I met in a parking lot 5 years ago and started working together and eventually got to this state we're at with the museum. But I also have a very similar background in stories, just like yours. I was doing the same thing in my home, but our cents per kilowatt hour was like 10.5. But it's pretty much increased by 30% year over year to where we are today. So now it's a little not plausible at home anymore. So.
Yeah, for sure. And Tyler, you're up. You're a northern amigo.
I'm in Ontario, so I'm a couple hours north of Toronto. And I started mining with little home miners, little pod miners and USB sticks. And I saw Tobias's website and noticed that he was missing some of the USB sticks. And that's where I came in. I was messaging him, hey, you got to get these on your site. And I got a couple more here. And then the local classified ads started coming up with old miners that he was missing too. So got into those, got him got those over to him. And that's how I became sort of part of the picture. And being in Canada, the electricity rates in Ontario are much lower than what you were talking about in Massachusetts. But I used to host with a company called Boris. They're no longer around, but they're in Labrador, just east of Quebec. And they had very, very low rates there. And so I was mining with the S9s. Right when they came out in 2016, I started mining with the S9s after I was done my little home experiments.
Lovely. And okay, I feel like this conversation could go on for a couple hours just based on my curiosity and the fact that I don't know if you guys know, we are running right now what we've called an ASIC. What's it called? The ASIC bracket, ASIC Miner Madness Bracket Challenge. It's a mouthful. As you guys are in mining. You guys know we can't just say anything simply. So we have picked 64 miners. We're now down to 32, and I want to call out some of those miners and see if you guys have them in the museum just off curiosity. But Tobias, you started this, you said 4 years ago. What did it look like when you started? Because the story in my head is you had like 15 miners, you were a collector, and you're like, I'm getting to the point where my family, maybe my wife, maybe my kids, I have to like make this more official so they don't think I'm crazy. And I might as well just go all in. So we're going to call it the Bitcoin Mining Museum. That's the story in my head, but I would love to hear the backstory.
Yeah. So when I started personally mining, it was out of my garage. And I had a moment where my passion just grew so much in the mining space and the Bitcoin space, where my day job with the U.S. government, working for the state of North Carolina, was like getting boring, and I hated it. And I didn't know how to tell my wife that I want to quit my job. So one day she seen the passion in me and came to me and said, why don't you just quit your day job? And it was like my whole family thought I was nuts for throwing a pension out the window and going full-time Bitcoin. And I was scared. It was a scary moment, but that fear turned into motivation to succeed. So I turned my garage into kind of like a small repair center, where I was helping a local publicly traded company in North Carolina who was mining here. And from that, it led to more clients. And then I had to get my own shop. So about 10 miles away from my house, I got a 1,500 square foot little building. And from there it grew to where I got more clients. But then Bitcoin crashed. And some of the miners, they just wanted to have refurbished. And when Bitcoin crashed, those miners were obsolete. They were not profitable, so they didn't want to pay. They didn't want them back. And next thing you know, I'm just, subconsciously collecting miners on my shelf. And one day I just recall sitting there drinking a beer on a Saturday and looking up and seeing, maybe a dozen miners on the shelf that were all different models. So I cleaned them up, lined them up, and then I went on eBay, found some more. And then I got to 20, 25, 30. And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, these would look cool in a museum. So I looked up Bitcoin Museum, crickets. Nothing out there. I'm like, that's crazy. You mean to tell me we're building the world's best financial decentralized infrastructure, yet nobody's preserving the history of the only tangible part that Bitcoin has, which is the miners? So that's where my idea popped up. I'm like, I might as well do it while OGs are still alive so I can interview them, ask questions, fill in the gaps, because there's a lot of stuff that you cannot Google search when it comes to some of this information from the past. And that's where everything grew from there to where we are today.
So how many, and this is for any of you, I'm Tobias, I'm assuming, CoinDad, I'm assuming this is maybe on the back of your hand, but since everyone I assume was also just at Mining Disrupt, maybe you're highly aware of this answer. How many miners do you currently have in inventory at the museum?
128, I believe, all different models.
I was gonna say, maybe I should have asked each of you individually to write it down on a piece of paper and then show me. It might have been different.
Well, because we have duplicates, so it's like I was like, okay. Man, I think we're at like 144 ish, but the single use is the one, right? So that's the question here. So
we do have a counter too in a big block on our website that says 128.
Nice.
Because just because I have something doesn't mean I won't get another one, because we've have our experiences over the years already that, people like to have fun at these events. They get tipsy or they're still hungover from the night before and they bump into one and then it falls on the floor and like, hey, okay, I got to pull out my backup now. But the fearful part for me is the fact that the rare ones that took me 4 or 5 years to find are irreplaceable. It's super difficult, even with somebody like myself that has so many OG connections around the world in the mining space. Like if I can't find it, then it's 99% chance nobody else will either, unless it's luck. You know what I mean? So it's
and that's obviously a low-hanging fruit question. So what are some that are just really rare? And I bring that up. I want to mention a colleague of mine, Tatum Cave. Do you guys know Tatum? Terahash Tatum, Turn Up Tatum. Yep. He's got many names on the street these days.
Yeah, he interviewed me in 2023, I think.
Yeah, and he's a big time collector. And he had put up something the other day, and I'm trying to pull up the Telegram. He put up something the other day on X, and I kind of reached out. I'm like, hey, man, I think I want to get into this collecting of miner games, because I can totally foresee a future where I'm not sure what particular miner, but XYZ miner in 10 years, someone's going to give you some serious coin for it, because you can't get it anymore, right? So I guess part of me is what's something exactly.
Here's one that I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, so what's that one that you're holding up? Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary services. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success.
This is actually before ASICs. This is the FPGA, which had a very short stint between, GPU, CPU, then these ASICs. I think maybe 6 to 10 months or something like that. It was the time period that these were profitable. But I found it took me like 4 months to build a relationship with the founder, because he's staying anonymous. But he has the prototype, and then he had this one, and he sold this one to me for me to put in the museum. And it's the only one signed by the founder. He's never signed one ever. So this right here will probably be millions of dollars in the next decade or 15 years or something.
Yeah, because
you think about it, an Apple computer like an Apple One, which actually I have sitting right there, is an old computer with 1 megabyte. So imagine you take a photo on your phone that's 10 megabytes. So 10 of those computers is today's photo on a phone. It's kind of mind blowing. But those computers are expensive when they're coming out of Steve Jobs' garage, and it's the Apple One. They're like $1 million, 1.5 million now.
Well, it's crazy because I actually saw an Apple One the other day on Facebook Marketplace, and it wasn't that much. And I'm thinking about just picking it up just to throw it in the closet. We can talk about that after.
There's only 200 that they made in his garage, and that was one of them.
Well, no, I'm not sure if it was one of them made in his garage, but it was an Apple One. And I just assume that there can't be that many Apple Ones just kind of hanging out. And now we're getting down a complete nerd tech route here that is not part of Bitcoin mining, but still interesting and part of the history of tech. I actually have an AirPod. No, not the AirPod. God, the iPod, the second generation, still plays music. And I will plug it into my, system, and I'm still playing, Biggie, Ready to Die from 1994. If you know, you know. But I did want to ask. I want to ask each of you to talk about a rare miner, and then I have a build on that, because I do think one of the most interesting things is going to be the value as they get more rare as basically the years move forward. So, Tyler, I'm going to throw it over to you. What is the miner that maybe the museum
going to discuss this right here?
What's that?
That's Tyler's favorite part of history, so I'll let him talk about it.
Yeah, so we know each other pretty well. So go ahead, Tyler. Why don't you get
Tyler,
started?
Please go ahead. Well, yeah, you're sorry. You have to
I'll do the show and tell. Tyler, talk.
Okay.
That is the ASIC Miner Block Eruptor version 1 of their blade. So that's the first product that the manufacturer ASIC Miner produced. So the name ASIC Miner is kind of lost to history. A lot of people just think that you're talking about the item, not the company. So ASIC Miner was actually a company that made these. That came out just 2 weeks after the world's first ASIC miner. So the Avalon 1 came out at the very end of January 2013. That came out in February, just a couple weeks after the Avalon 1. And this was made by a very popular figure in Bitcoin talk at the time. The name went by the username of Fried Cat. And the end of this company is kind of notoriously known for ending up running away with a lot of customer funds. But while they were producing
140,000 Bitcoin to be exact.
Yes, and nobody knows what happened to the company, the founder, Fried Cat. They're just gone, and nobody's heard from them since. But this is their first product. They had a very, very good reputation in the beginning. They created the miners. That's the version 2 Tobias is holding above. It's the second iteration that they released just a couple months after the first. They created these miners, and they were selling both the hardware and they were selling their hashing service, like their mining facilities. They're selling shares of their hash rate. And they, at one point in 2013, they controlled over 20% of the global network just in their mining facilities. Not to mention all the hardware that they had shipped out to other miners that were mining for themselves. And they were doing very well. The investors all did well up until the very end. So in 2014, a year later, maybe at the end of 2014, if I'm not mistaken, maybe early 2015 is when they had problems with one of their last product that they had created, the ASIC miner block disruptor Prisma. And we also have that one in our museum as well that we're showing off at Mine and Disrupt. So that was the last product. They had issues with people mining with those and having chips actually exploding and catching on fire. And so they were dealing with a lot of heat from that, and shortly after went missing. So we don't know if it's attributed directly to their last product or it was a confluence of different issues. They had some issues with their mining facilities, people stealing their equipment at the same time. So a lot of stuff went down near the end. But that particular board is their first one, and the chips on there, the BE100 ASIC chips, are the same ones that they use in the block eruptor USB sticks, which I mentioned before were sort of my starting point, my foot in. And those were very, very popular, and they helped grow Bitcoin when people are still trying to figure out what Bitcoin was, and to get them into the hands of a lot of different people. Because mining centralization was a huge issue at the beginning too. So they were trying to ship out as many products as they can to as many different separate individuals or companies as they can, as to not centralize the hash rate. So he's got a whole display there of USB miners, and the block eruptors are on the top right there. There's a row of 5 of them he's got. And then, of course, Bitmain jumped in, and then GridC jumped in. They kind of took that idea. So the form factor, the Ant miners are the exact same as the ASIC miner ones. Like if you hold them together, exact same height, exact same thickness. They even stole most of the colors too. They were kind of fun. They were colorful. So I guess my favorites would have to be the Blade with the USB sticks, because they were released at the same time. They have the same chip, same manufacturer, and they really started spreading the word and trying to distribute the hash rate right at the beginning. And they open sourced everything too, so you have the schematics for their firmware, software, and hardware.
And how many of those?
Jared, real quick, back then this Fried Cat figure, he went to Harvard, and Jihan Wu at the time, before he invented Bitmain, translated the white paper into Mandarin. And this Fried Cat guy read it, and he's so smart. I consider him kind of like the Vitalik Buterin of mining. You know, he designed that BE100 chip, but he understood Bitcoin fairly quickly and literally left whatever he was supposed to be studying at Harvard and jumped in, head first into the whole mining space. But Jihan Wu was one of his investors early in the days into this company that Tyler's been talking about. All this is before Bitmain ever came about. So
yeah, this is all
between 2013 and 14 was like the Wild West of the industry of mining.
Yeah, this is all very, very early in mining. And I always talk about how I think you only hit 1 exahash in 2016. So this is all so early, where Tyler's you're talking about, you could plug a USB stick into your computer and mine. That idea is crazy, right? The amount of
this
computing
hit a 50 Bitcoin block. The owner told me that.
Yeah.
So this mined a block for 50 Bitcoin in the first epoch. That's crazy.
which is currently street value worth about, I don't know, 4.2 million if my math is fuzzy at all, which is pretty ridiculous. Tyler, how many of those between the what looks like the hash board and then the USBs, and please anyone hop in here, how many of those exist in the world?
So those ones actually are not, wouldn't really be considered as rare as a lot of the other pieces that we have in our museum, because they did make, we don't have an official number, but just there's pictures of Friedcat's, an ASIC miner's facility, and they were doing immersion cooling, and they had bases that held 100 blades each, and they had a whole warehouse full. So probably hundreds of thousands of blades and USB stick miners, hundreds of thousands of those too. There's two different stick miners that they made, ASIC miner made, that were the first production batch before they fixed sort of their processing. And so those are a little more difficult to find. They only made a few thousands of those, few thousand each of those. But the rest are so I say that they made a lot, they manufactured a lot, but that was back then. And a lot of people either had failures for those and threw them out, or they were no good anymore, which happens with a lot of the equipment that we're trying to look for. They just recycled. And so we don't know how many, it's really impossible to tell how many are still available. We found those by contacting one of ASIC Miner's distributors, their official distributor in Canada, in Winnipeg, actually. And he was selling T-shirts saying "Fried Cat for President" because he had a very good following. He was making great products. Their shares were selling. He was making a lot of people money, and he had a big following. So the community made shirts that said "Fried Cat for President." And I saw it on eBay, and then I'm like, I'm one of the only people that will understand where that came from. So I clicked on it. I clicked on the guy's business, and I started direct messaging him and just asking him if he has any old equipment from ASIC Miner. And that's how we ended up getting the blades and a few other pieces of our museum and other products of ASIC Miner through there. So a lot have been made of the blades that we're looking at and the stick miners. But there are some rare pieces that ASIC Miner had made. The Prismas, they had issues, so they were trying to iterate them. They didn't make as many. We're still looking for ASIC Miner 2. We can't find any of those anywhere. Those were short production batches. There's still some on our list that we're trying to find. But it's really hard. That's one of the difficult things about it, is finding out, like, we have numbers on the Avalon 1, some of the Butterfly Labs pieces, but ASIC Miner is a really difficult one to find numbers on.
Yeah, so what's that one that you're holding up, CoinDad?
That's a Butterfly Labs jalapeno. And this was very popular, but also very hated. Well, maybe Lance can tell this story.
Well, yeah, I was going to see if you can guess what my favorite piece is, and I don't know if you have it there, but it is a Butterfly Labs piece.
The Monarch?
Yeah. Do you got the Monarch with you?
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
So, Lance, while he goes to get that, what are we talking about for compute? Is this a terahash, less than a terahash?
No, these are still less than it. We're still in the gigahash realm.
Okay.
So this is Butterfly Labs. I mean, if we're going to continue the question, I'll answer my favorite and we'll go from there. So,
yeah, please,
well,
please.
Though, just so you know, Adam Back came through our museum at one of the events, and he was pretty impressed with what we were building. And I found out from him that this was his first miner. So he actually signed it for us. That was a pretty legendary moment in our museum history to have somebody like him come through and sign one of miners that he used.
Steal some of the cool thunder here, but yeah, so Butterfly Labs actually made probably the slickest looking products when it comes to miners. As you can tell with the presentation here on the Monarch, it's I would say it's elegant. It looks nice. It's something you would want to showcase. But they have a very long, notorious history. So now Butterfly Labs really comes into the scene mid 2013. Kind of later into it, they're actually end up using Bitmain's ASIC chipsets, the 28 nanometer chipsets. And so that's how they really get bore. But their products themselves are actually really good. They're really nice products. This case right here, we have the Monarch. This is their first flagship that says, hey, we'll do it on a PCI card. We'll do it affordable. You can either put it in your slot, you can use the case, you can do whatever you want with it and use the card as is. Now, this is a 600 gigahash roughly unit. This is announced in late 2013, probably like August timeframe, with an expected delivery in December. Now, the problem with Butterfly Labs is at this point in their career, they're requiring all orders from miners to be prepaid, not like buy them, we'll ship them the next day. It was prepaid. And so Butterfly Labs received something over 20,000 orders for their equipment. This is including the Monarch. This is including like the mini rig. And they basically have a failure to deliver. The owners, and this is actually now in court case documentation, right? They had major purchases of homes and luxuries vehicles, and finding orders that were hooked up for testing purposes, but that testing was a mining operation that lasted for like 60 days before they would prep and ship the product to their customer. So now that's part of the speculation on the overall time frame, but the whole point is we had tons and tons of customers that never got their order. So this piece, the Monarch, is probably the rarest piece. Between that and the mini rig, they're the pieces that never really shipped. And so
the mini rig is the largest one they made. Weird why they called it mini rig. It's about this big.
It's a massive tower. But that's kind of where the case went for Butterfly Labs, and ultimately they get FBI rated and they get shut down. Thousands of people are unhappy with not getting their orders. And the thing with Butterfly Labs is interesting on the execution because they had a great product. Everybody loved the product as it was being used. They just became infamous as an operational company, I believe. And that was in the U.S. too. That was
Missouri, I think.
Yeah, it was Missouri or Kansas. I believe it was Missouri. And ultimately the operation gets shut down. They're in full lawsuit mode by mid 2014 before everything's just kind of pulled out from under them. So that's the case. That is probably my favorite unit. It's interesting how many players come to the space, like we talked about. As Avalon 1 comes online, as Kanan says, hey, we're hit this market, we attribute them with the very first ASIC because it's the first ASIC to be sold. And that's kind of the nice thing about being the authorities on history here, because we get to say it how we want to say it. But that's how we tell the story, right? And in that mid 2013 range, I call it the ASIC wars kind of begin, because shortly thereafter, the first S1 is introduced. We have ASIC miner with the Friedcat side, who is going all sorts of stuff with their blades and looking at the Prisma models. Butterfly Labs exists, and then we kind of go down the line of a lot of these guys who are trying to get into space and stay away from the industrial side, as what Bitmain is kind of doing, what Avalon's doing, what's miners when they get into it, what they're doing. We enter a lot of the home guys who are looking at USBs, using smaller scale stuff to kind of encourage the standard retail buyer. But that between 2013 and 2015, we have a slew of devices that exists. And then we could kind of see that market right after there kind of just die to the big three. And then you see a couple of people starting to poke their heads right back into it who are trying to get some market share. And we see what we're doing today, which, the revolution of home mining is coming right back. Thanks to, like Sky, what they're doing at BitX, what, Future BTC with, FutureBit is doing with their Apollos. We're seeing that come full circle again, where people are like, no, I still want to be a part of this. Like, I didn't want to leave the movement. And that's what I use at home too. I use the small guys at home too now. So, yeah, but that's the story. The Monarch to me is probably just it's the prettiest one. I mean, when you come to the museum, you'll see no offense to the S21, right? It's just
the only thing missing
compared
is
to
wheel.
what you got here. So
yeah, that is, I had not seen that before. That is beautiful. It looks like something out of Star Wars. I don't know. It looks something out of sci-fi rather than something that's utilitarian, maybe to hash away at the to support the network. CoinDad, do you want to share yours, or I have a different question, because I'm sure maybe you have many miners, or I don't know, kind of like your children, and it's hard to pick one.
I got a little fun fact.
Let's do the fun fact. Then I have a question, because I'm very interested about the rarity of all these.
Okay, well, here's a little fun fact.
Oh gosh, isn't that like a sidekick?
This is an N900 Nokia phone.
Yeah.
And in December 7th, 2010, the network was small enough that somebody downloaded the blockchain on it and mined Bitcoin off the battery and sent, I believe, 0.43 Bitcoin to another N900 cell phone user. And that is recorded on Bitcoin Talk when that moment happened. So that's verifiable on Bitcoin Talks history. But yeah, we have the N900 from 2010 in the museum, which is pretty dope.
I'm not sure how old everyone is on this call,
And
but I
that's
was watching
kilohash, not gigahash,
kilohash.
it's with a K, which is super tiny.
Super tiny. And I was going to say, I'm not sure how old everyone is on the call, and we don't need to age ourselves out. But I will say, as a proud millennial myself, I saw a video the other day of Gen Alpha. So I think we're under like 14 years old or something. They were trying to guess what like a CD player was that was like had like anti-skip. And that video made me feel so old. It also made me laugh a lot, but I felt so freaking old. So I can imagine when you show that phone in 10 years to anyone who's under the age of 25 in 10 years, and you say we used to mine Bitcoin after they've walked through, I don't know, 300 megawatt site in the middle of West Texas, their head's not going to be able to, wrap around that time warp. What I wanted to ask was around the financing of the museum. And what I really want to ask is, eventually, some of these machines you have could be worth a lot of money. Is there a point where you guys are like, hey, we have 2 of these. Once this hits a point and we have some private collector come to us, what does that look like? Because I feel like, just like maybe this is an anti-Bitcoin thing to say, but I do feel like everyone on some level has a price for their Bitcoin. If it hits 10 million, you'll be like, oh, okay, all right, maybe I want to retire. Maybe I want to, take the kids to Europe for 6 months and not think about it. So how are you guys thinking about that moving forward? Because I do know that there's just going to be more and more people that are going to be willing to pay top dollar for some of these older pieces of hardware that you guys have that, as you've said, are so rare. And I always say money moves towards opportunity, aka betting, gambling, day trading, but wealth moves towards scarcity, right? And so something that's scarce is really going to be pulling in a nice price tag. So do you have people approach you to buy some of your units? Have you had to have those like, hey, let's get on a call quandaries because this is a big amount of money and this would help us to do different things with the museum?
So to answer your first question on the capital side of everything, I've funded on my own.
Okay.
So I own the whole thing outright. I don't have any partners. There's no investors. There's roughly about 10% of the museum that was donated by other miners or OGs. And I'm transparent, and it's written on the website that we are not a nonprofit. So anything that's donated is not really a tax write-off or anything. But yeah, all the capital has been over the last half a decade of me building it out of my own pocket. It has helped a whole lot, obviously, that Tyler and Lance, and shout out to also Parker, who's with Marathon, but he's our media director, and he's the one that helped build the website out and does a lot of the cool looking stuff and videos and things like that. But my whole team has basically been mostly volunteer work. Now, if we go to the conferences, we cover everything, and then we deal with sponsorships, or the conference books us, and everything is paid for. So nothing comes out of their pocket for that. But on the side of the valuation right now of the museum, we've actually spent as a team a 2-week period a few months back where we did a full inventory. We dealt with analytics from the websites, social media analytics, the followers, the valuation of how much comes in for the museum when it comes to conferences booking us, the value of some of the rarest miners we have. And it took us 2 whole weeks, but we came up with a nice 20-page, basically like an acquisition proposal. And we're roughly at about 1.5 million in the valuation of the museum right now, as is. And that's the trailer, the custom trailer for all the miners when we move from point A to point B. That's the logo, the website, that's everything involved, including memorabilia. Like I also have the world's first Bitcoin magazine with the autograph of the founder in the front and Charlie Shrem, who had a commercial in the back. There's these rare shoes, McLaren shoes, that have 20 autographs, including Michael Saylor and Adam Back and Max Kaiser and a lot of big people that I'm just like, this is all memorabilia kind of just on the side that's a part of the museum. But valuation wise, that's where we're currently at. But, and at one point I'm thinking to myself, let me just pass the baton to like a Michael Saylor or, or David Bailey or somebody like that to take it to something greater because I can't afford it. I'm at that bottleneck right now. And the biggest issue that we're finding is when I drive 1,000 miles to a place and 1,000 miles back, like I just did, I actually hit a pothole with the trailer and a miner fell off the shelf and broke, or somebody drunk at the conference bumps into one and then it breaks. I don't want that to happen with, something like this that I cannot replace. So it's time for a brick and mortar. And now that we have an administration that's pro Bitcoin and pretty much everybody surrounding Trump is pro Bitcoin and the climate is changing in the United States and he's wanting to have America be the Bitcoin capital of the world, I think now the climate is right for finding a stationary brick and mortar for our museum, and maybe doing a mini version or something that can go out to different conferences to still show cool stuff, but to preserve and save the main part of it stationary somewhere so we can save the history of Bitcoin mining, or the only tangible part of Bitcoin, to be honest.
Yeah. Before I kind of build off that, Lance, Tyler, anything to add on there?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing to add is, the stories are difficult. It's really awesome to be now considered a source, right? There's a lot of work that Parker and Tyler just did for the mining magazines. We're trying to provide all that info that is difficult to carry as a tangible cost. So there's some of the signed versions we have, and a lot of these guys reach out to us so we can give them photos.
Be cool.
Yeah, to give them photos, to give them information, stories. We host a lot of interview segments and do these pieces that are not available on YouTube. It's because we also respect the privacy of people that want to tell stories but don't want to be included, and that has changed how we understand how some of these systems were created. We have some very exciting interviews coming up very close that we can't really announce with people that have purposely not wanting to be seen for a long time. That's not something that you can evaluate, but we do this as a labor of love. If it's successful, we just want to see that these stories are told, that it's something that can let the generation understand where this came from. People are trying to solve something, this problem that's overwhelming, right? Something that came out of the 2007 financial housing crisis, right? When did this white paper start? People say it's like, to me, if you ask me what's bad about Bitcoin, I say it's terrible that it ever had to exist, right? That's a reality, but it does. And I think it shows a promise to what ingenuity can lead to, that people can critically think and get out of something and create something greater. So I think there's a little bit of a wholesomeness to this story that I like to teach. It's my favorite part about the museum. I hate lugging around a Bitfury that's 150 pounds and trying to, shovel this around and sweat and stand on your feet all day. But the actual teaching is super important to me. And I love explaining to it. I love when we go to conferences and people even ask, the basics. I'm there for that. I'll say we're the Sweden of the conference, right? We're super neutral. We're the only booth there not to sell you anything. So people start to hang out and ask questions, and you'll hear stories, and we'll get, hey, have you ever seen this miner? I find something new out every time we do this, every time. And so that I think that grows the community, right, in a good way. So I do also hope that there is going to be a time where there is going to be a centralized location, brick and mortar, that allows people to understand that this has happened, how it's changed. Obviously we can fit our roadshow into 1,000 square foot spot, right, and explain a lot of things. But I think there's so much more tangibleness to Bitcoin and what the world of trying to solve problems for the normal person, where that goes. And so I think there's a lot to it. I hope that story shoves into to the generation ahead of us and let them know that there's more to it.
Yes.
If I can, I want to build on the brick and mortar, because that was obviously a question I had, and I wanted to ask you guys, where would that be located if money weren't an issue and you could get it done? Tobias, maybe it would make sense to have it in North Carolina if that's where you guys are both kind of near. But is there a place that you think it makes sense to have a brick and mortar?
So that answer to that question has been lingering in my mind for over a year now. I've actually done polls online about it. I've gotten some feedback from people. Obviously, it boiled down to places like Nashville or Miami or Austin, Texas, or Charlotte, North Carolina, which all have a decent following when it comes to Bitcoin. But recently, the beautiful part about going to conferences is when that we actually attract some of the OGs automatically because they get triggered off of seeing some of these machines. I've seen OGs cry in front of us, like, because they haven't seen this miner in 10 years and they know that this is where it all started for them. But they open up sometimes and tell some crazy stories that you can't Google it online. And through these relationships and these stories, they give me their feedback. And one piece of feedback that I got coming out of Mining Disrupt was a very good point that one of them made. That when you deal with the older generation, the Pelosi's of the world, it's kind of difficult to educate them on something that you can't touch or see. So we've had moments where an elderly person comes in, or even a newbie that's on the fence about Bitcoin, and boom, in front of their face, they're like, hold up, Bitcoin's new to me, but there's 100 machines in front of my face with over a decade of history right here of Bitcoin. Like, that can't be a scam. This is real. So they see something real in front of them, and that helps them orange pill like almost right away. Like, damn, this is for real. Because I seen an actual museum for Bitcoin. And I think that putting something like this in Washington, D.C. will help when it comes to the political side of things, because they can just come down the street and we can give them a tour and educate people from anybody that's in the political sphere. But also just as important is the fact that in the school system across the United States, whether it's middle school, high school, or colleges, they do field trips to Washington, D.C. to go see the Capitol, go see the White House. So we can actually attract and educate part of on a national level from Washington, D.C., some of these school field trips that come through, and have things set up for them, and even have like a little, my vision, my ultimate vision is called Bit World Center. And we already have the website, got a drop page for bitworldcenter.com, and even on X, same name. But if I found somebody that has deep pockets in the Bitcoin world, because I don't, I would love to, find a building or facility somewhere in Washington, D.C., and it would not be just the museum. The museum would be the backbone of this project. It would be things like an educational place for the students and for any politicians. It would be even a bar and grill in there where the menu has, Hal Finney name and Satoshi drinks and Charlie Shrem and OGs to keep their name and legacy alive. It would have a storefront where where all the BitAxe manufacturers would sell their BitAxes, or Bitcoin Magazine, or right here, from Mining Disrupt, have their magazines for sale, where FOMO 21 would have their apparel shop and sell some of their products. Bitcoin trading cards, they're growing pretty rapidly too right now. Like, I just got the world's first sailor card from Tag just a couple of days ago. Like, look at that. That's sick. Like, who wouldn't want to buy that if they see this in the store? Things like that, like an all out, and it doesn't exist in this world. There is no center place that's all strictly Bitcoin. Like, let's just say you, Jarrett, you're still single. You found a girlfriend and she's a Bitcoiner, and y'all want a Bitcoin themed wedding. Rent this place out on a Saturday, surrounded by the history of Bitcoin's DNA. Stuff like that to me is just awesome. I'm excited about it. This is just a vision right now, but I also believe in manifestation by talking like we are right now.
Well, you're putting it out in the world, and I am also a believer in manifestation. It's absolutely crazy when I talk about it all the time. If you go into a parking lot and it looks full and you say, yep, there's going to be a spot. There normally turns out to be a spot. I hadn't even considered DC. I was thinking somewhere in Texas, Austin. You got the Texas Blockchain Council down there. Lee is obviously very bullish on Bitcoin. Guy. Yeah, and that's just kind of where the hash is in America, so I assume that would be a place. But I love the idea of DC. As an 8th grader, I went to DC. We took that trip down in the coach buses, and we, spent a week doing all the things, learning about government, learning about the mint, learning about the different branches of government, doing all the museums. And so I actually think it would fit in there. And we're in a weird moment in time where Doge is doing some cleaning of house. And so they say that 40% of the restaurants in DC are not going to be around by 2026 because people are moving, and housing is down about 20% because they can't pay their mortgages and they're going to have to move. And they don't see their future in the U.S. government anymore. So maybe it's an interesting time to go snap up an old restaurant or some real estate and start to put a brick and mortar.
Thinking Doge, I would love to meet with Bo Hines or David Sachs, drive up there and bring some of this stuff with me and have this conversation with them, because from what I read recently, by Doge cutting funding, like, for example, I heard Dr. Fauci was supposed to have his own museum under the Biden administration, and Doge cut that funding off. Hello? Why not bring that funding this way to bring the world's first Bit World Center to D.C.? And then the buildings, I think there's 400 federal buildings across the U.S. that are supposed to be sold, and some of them are in D.C. So what if they were to donate one of these buildings that are not being used right now? I mean, there's different pieces in this cat.
It feels like if there's a will, there's a way, because there's enough publicly traded miners that if they each put in $1 million, which they have, there's 30 million, and you could just go 30 million plus, and you could, put that together, and then they could all make sure their logos are, equally distributed around the ground.
With supporting them. I mean, picture like the Hard Rock Cafe setting, and you have all this memorabilia and miners scattered around. Like the Avalon one that's behind me, what they were talking about is the world's first ASIC. Just imagine like this Mission Impossible laser lights, smoke coming out the bottom, like in the centerpiece of this lobby of the museum, where you walk in and you see that this is the Mona Lisa of mining. Like, whoa, that's dope. Things like that. And it's just like when you go in there, you just like, wow, this is like the coolest museum I've ever seen. That's what Bitcoin makes me feel like. It's like, I want that feeling when you walk into this type of facility, and that this is an all-in-one type place, world's first.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Lance, Tyler, beyond DC, Tyler, would you want to pull it up to the Northern Amigos?
They're going to be the 51st state, so who cares?
To be determined, I guess. I don't know. I like the idea. I think that honestly, the Bitcoin space is more in the US in general, I think, more than Canada. I don't think there would be the appetite for it now. And I think maybe in general, we just are very early in this type of phone. But I like the idea of DC.
Yeah. Tyler? Excuse me, Lance?
Yeah, all I will say is, and we actually had the honor to sit down with Dennis Porter also last week and talk to him, and just the good work they're doing with the Satoshi Action Fund. But from an education standpoint, I don't see a better route. I know I've talked with Tobias about this a couple times as well, just because there is this vision of brick and mortar, and we won't be always to be able to be there, right? We do this as a labor of love. It's a part-time gig. I say it's not even part-time. It's a terrible hobby, is what I say. It's a really, really bad hobby. But DC has just the right access. And we think of trying to make decisions. I think that people need to have access to the right information. And a lot of times that is physical communication, that is discussing, that is seen, that is physical touch, right? That establishment changes viewpoint or changes perception, right? And that's a very key tactic a lot of times. I don't want to say tactic. That makes it sound nefarious here, but that is what you want people to be able to see and touch. So to me, yes, I envision that this is Smithsonian style level, where there's a partnership that discusses the evolution of value, right? And because the story of gold needs to be told, the story of what's happened with oil needs to be told, the story of what's happened with Bitcoin, hopefully being that closing chapter, also needs to be told. And the whys, right? And to me, the last thing I'll leave it with is, especially in the world of cryptos, right? People always talk about all these new things that come out, and I always kind of give them the first litmus test is, well, what problem does it solve? And a lot of people affected by what happened in the late 2007 through 2009, that was solving this problem that affected families really globally, but really harshly in the United States. And that's not what anyone else is doing, right? So that's kind of how I like to leave it at. I think that perception change will be way more monumental when we talk about it in the US's capital.
Yeah, I think being able to touch and see is super important, and especially in the digital world, I still think it's why many people can't wrap their head around social media. I tell people all the time, I'd rather have 1 million subs on YouTube than $1 million any day of the week. Any day of the week. Give me those 1 million subs over $1 million any day of the week. Because with $1 million, I can't buy 1 million subs necessarily. But I don't think that value is totally understood. So if people don't understand that basic concept, that basic concept of like digital networks, understanding Bitcoin is even beyond them. And well, now it's my turn to do a little show and tell. CoinDad, you've been flexing over there with all your stuff. I am currently in Massachusetts, but I normally live most of my time in South America, in Colombia. And a little history lesson. Way back in the day when the Spanish Empire was roaming around down there, what is today Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador was called Gran Colombia. So the Great Colombia. And it was all one country. So I always see Venezuelans and Ecuadorians just like my people. I was born in Colombia. I'm Colombian. But one of the things, as you guys know, in Venezuela, they've had crazy problems with currency devaluation, debasement. Like it's horrible. And so I was walking around the other day and I bought these bills. And here's a bill, a 200,000, right? And here's a 500,000. And finally, this is the one that made me buy this. This guy in the street talked me up and I was like, fine. I'll buy it. This is the first time in the Americas we've had a retail bill that was a million, these are bolivars, but 1 million units. So you're looking at this is the first time they had to print 1 million units. And this was printed in, I believe, 2020. So in 2020, in September of 2020. So when I show people this is really powerful, as you were just talking about, Lance. People need to see. You've referenced the 2007, 2008 financial crisis. I'm talking all the time that like the dollar is devaluing. You just can't see it. When you're pegged to the dollar, this is what happens though. You have to try to keep up. So you just keep printing. Right. So I think it's a very, very powerful thing. And just like you guys are collecting miners, my grandfather collected coins, and we actually sold a coin off eBay last night from like 1870. $50 from 1870 or something, something ridiculous. So I think when people can see physically and touch things, it's really powerful. So I think the Bitcoin Mining Museum is massive, and there's no better way to explain the history of Bitcoin and potentially talk about the future of Bitcoin without that. And I just love the idea, selfishly, of having Bitcoin in DC, because you're going to incept so many politicians on both the right and the left that just need a little bit of, they need that extra little push, because 99% is 100, and they need that 1% extra of, oh my gosh, this is what this is. Oh, I see how this could help my state. I see how this could take advantage of the fact that we have all this extra energy or something, wasted, stranded energy. So, absolutely spot on. DC was not, I assumed you guys are going to say Austin, Texas.
So one little thing, another thing on the political side for educational is, our banking system currently is the brick and mortar, and you stand in line. People still pull out their checkbooks, which make me throw up inside when I see that now. But the system of the bankings, I think the last time I looked, it was 53,000 branches in the United States of America. And that's air conditioners, maintenance teams, and the bills that run the building. And they're there year after year after year after year, just the same. But Bitcoin mining, you can show these politicians that we went from that little USB stick that Tyler was talking about to now today's S21 Plus, where you actually need, I think it's close to 800,000 of the little USB sticks from just 12 years ago to equal one miner from today. So it shows in front of their face the efficiency process of the chips, of how Bitcoin's network just gets better and more efficient, unlike the current banking system.
Yeah, we had put up something the other day. Actually, no, it was the Bitcoin Bugle did some satire about how we're going to start hosting bid axes for customers. and it was 10 megawatts of BitX hosting. And so we did some math, and in order to do 10 megawatts of BitX hosting, you would need 588,000 BitXs. And for anyone in mining, that is a complete quagmire of how you would even get the wiring and the cabling to get that all done and make sure it's all on network and whatever. We are a little bit over time, and I want to make sure you guys get back to your day, because time is the most valuable resource other than Bitcoin. So where can people find out more information? Obviously, the Coin Dad, I can tag you on X. I can tag the Bitcoin Mining Museum on X. I can put the website. Are you guys on LinkedIn? Do you have a YouTube? Lance and Tyler, I can get your information to make sure you're tagged on the episode. But where's the best place? It sounds like the website is a pretty good start for people.
BitcoinMiningMuseum.com. On X is BTCMiningMuseum.com. It's so long that they couldn't give us the regular name, so we cut that down. So BTC Mining Museum on X, and then the vision is bitworldcenter.com. There is I purchased a cold storage wallet for that project and for the museum. So anybody that does want to donate to help us out with what we're doing, that's on that drop page. If you scroll down, there's QR code and the Bitcoin wallet address for anybody that wants to help us out. And if there's any whales out there that have so much Bitcoin they don't know what to do with and wants to drop 5 of them in there to help us get this project going, that would be amazing. I would prefer the community to help us do this and build it, for the simple fact that it allows us decision control. I've been asked about doing the nonprofit, but then you got board of directors, you got all this stuff with the governments and the states involved. And then even if Doge was to say, here's a building, now we're still stuck to whatever they tell us when it comes to the building. So I would prefer if we can come together on the community side to try to build all this out. That was my thought process with a discussion I had last night about which way to take this.
Yeah, all that makes sense. One last thing. Are you guys going to be in Vegas?
Yes, I will be. Tyler, I think he has to work, right? You can't come.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to make that one as much as I'd love to.
I think the question is, will the museum be in Vegas?
Okay.
So let's because a lot of us are involved, but we are still, what we're trying to do is stir up a little bit of grassroots movement, because it is a 5-day-ish trip for us to get the museum to Vegas.
So I would be gone for half a month to make that happen. 5 days there driving, 4 days on the ground, 5 days back, plus everything that's involved when it comes to 15 nights in a hotel, a 5-man team. So I spoke to the conference coordinators. They reached out to me. We had a video call. They said that they're going to try to find a sponsor, which hasn't happened yet. So if a sponsor is out there, I think the sponsorship, it's pretty big, because we're the backbone of the whole mining village that they have over there with our museum. And since I take a lot of space, we're looking at probably anywhere from $100,000 to $110,000 sponsorship, from what I understand. So if any big ballers out there wants to bring the museum to Las Vegas, we're here. We're ready to do it, make it happen, but we can't do it for free. Not for one that far, for sure. So,
well, hopefully we'll see you guys there. I plan to be there. Compass will be there. So hopefully we'll see you there. I think somebody will step in, because it's very, very important. And I just always say that 99% of people in Bitcoin have no idea what mining is. And 99, if not higher. So I think it's really important that you guys are there, because at the end of the day, no miners, no Bitcoin. The Coin Dad, Lance, Tyler, thank you so much for hopping on the pod. And if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. Listen to this on a podcast platform, please subscribe. Follow us on X, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Compass Mining. And thank you guys once again for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having us. I appreciate it.